当
Well, Billy returns home and tells all the members of the group, that they're going to have to straighten up, and he's explaining to him all about the difficulties, but it doesn't seem to be working. The intrigues and the backstabbing are getting pretty bad around the house. Just a week or so earlier, it's worth noting, on New Year's Eve, there was a little celebration at the center there, and many of the people were there, about 20 of them, and they were all kind of, having a drink of wine and having a good time and having an interesting evening. Billy doesn't drink wine. But Billy was being pressed to show some of his spiritual abilities to the group. And it was kind of done in good faith. I mean, good fun. They'd heard stories about Billy being able to do things with his mind, and they wanted to see something. Because reportedly, when they were moving into the home, on one particular occasion, Billy was able, with his own spiritual abilities, to actually lift a very heavy oven that was too heavy for 4 men to pick up. He moved it onto the truck with the force of his own mind. Well, they'd heard about this, but none of them had really seen anything. So they were kind of pushing Billy to do something. So what ensued was, and Billy seemed to be a little embarrassed by it, and perhaps maybe his feelings were a little bit hurt somehow. He has some strange attitudes sometimes. But at any rate, he was pushed into it, and he started accepting coins from people and performing, I guess you call, like parlor tricks. And he caused a couple of coins to get red hot. He burnt one in his hand. He was able to take a spoon and not only bend it, but have a spoon almost melt and fly across the table. So he kind of got everybody's attention, and everyone got to see Billy's powerful spiritual abilities that night. And so for them it was also true, and this served as kind of a strong thing for most of them of what Billy was talking about, how you can really develop personal abilities through the use of the Spirit. So they had a pretty good show on New Year's Eve. Well, I see we're about out of tape, and we're towards the end of Book 18 now. So I'll see you on the other side, and we'll take a trip to San Francisco in the future. Okay, we're back, and we're on the last side of the contact notes. I've probably told you that the contact notes are actually 18 books. Each book is 100 pages long. And I've gone through chronologically just about everything in them. I've left out a few things, mainly most of the information about creation and science of the universe. And I've left out most all the information about religion, philosophy, God, Jesus Christ, because I want to do those on separate tapes where I can talk about them all at one time. You see, there was information on these subjects every now and then, but it was all broken up where it's difficult to put all the pieces together. So you have separate tapes in your collection called Emmanuel and Creation, which puts all of the information about these ideas into one section so you can hear it all the way through. Okay, we're up to the 102nd contact, which is on Tuesday, February 21st, 1978. We're into our third year of contacts now. It was in the middle of the night that they came this time. Quetzal and Meier came, and they landed their ship right in front of the house. Actually, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning. The whole household was asleep, and Billy was surprised that they landed right out in front of the house. And they were in Meier's old ship, which when it sits down on the ground burns a hole in the ground. And they were, of course, able to come out and take pictures of that in the morning. So Billy comes out in front of the house, and they explained they weren't too concerned about anybody seeing him at this hour, and everybody in the house was asleep. I don't know if anybody woke up and took a look, but they should have. They're always wanting to see things, and here they would have got to see them right in the front yard. Quetzal was kind of urgent to come and see Billy, and because he wanted to talk a little bit about the Befath, that he was quite sure that the Befath were going to attempt something else towards his life, and they wanted to do something, and they were waiting for the Befath to do something. And Billy says, yeah, I had a strange event happen just the other day, and there was some noise, and I heard gunfire off in the distance, and suddenly the whole house was kind of shaking and rumbling, and there was all this noise, and I didn't know what was going on. And Quetzal cuts in and says, we know exactly what was going on. Let me tell you what happened. They'd been watching out for the Befath to do something. The Befath did. They They heard the gunshots, the cannons that were being fired off in the distance for some sort of celebration, and a triangle, a delta-shaped ship, which is the sign of the Befath. They come in these delta-shaped ships. They moved one in over Billy's house and were going to try to fire at the house and actually destruct the entire house and kill everyone. And Meier and Quetzal quickly acted and moved their ship right above the house and screened it so the Befath couldn't see them. When the Befath fired, it actually hit Quetzal's ship. And the sound that Billy heard was the sound, I guess kind of the reflection of the explosion, whatever, when this energy beam hit Quetzal's ship, and to save Billy's house. So he was explaining all this all about him, and commented also that in the future they had now decided that they were going to take action against the Befath, and there was going to be, as soon as Ptah had okayed it, there was going to be action taken actually to take the Befath off the planet. The little ship that had fired at him that night, they had gone after, seized it, and Meier had destroyed the ship so the Befath would no longer have the use of that. You get the idea as you're reading the notes. There's a difference in personality for sure between Semjase and Quetzal. Semjase seems to be a little more emotional. She gets a little more excited here and there. She's a little sharper with her tongue and her tone about things. Where Quetzal seems to be much more mild-mannered. He seems to be a little bit more understandable, I would say a little more considerate of the situation. He's more tolerable to things, and I like reading the passageways in the books when Quetzal's involved. He just seems to have a really nice personality where he's really trying very hard. He's obviously a very peaceful and loving man. Okay, we're up to the 104th contact, Saturday, March 18th. And Billy's talking to Quetzal, and he says, the ship that we're in, does it have time travel capabilities? And Quetzal says, yes, it does. What exactly are you up to? And Billy says, well, I want to go into the future. And not just the future. I want to go to a specific place in the future. I want to go to San Francisco and see the next great earthquake. Is there any reason why I couldn't? And Quetzal says, no, not that I can think of. I see no problem with that. But he says the ship that he was using, he'd have to return to the base and make some sort of adjustments or something, because it apparently only had the ability to go into the future for about 30 minutes at a time. And there was no explanation why this was, or why the particular ship that they were using only had that capabilities. But he did. He returned to the base and made some sort of adjustments with the ship. Then he and Billy struck out for the future. Okay, we move into the future, and it doesn't say exactly where they are and what date they are at. But the contact notes begin with they are about 300 kilometers from San Francisco, in the future someplace. And Billy is looking out the hatch of the ship, and he sees the San Andreas Fault. Quetzal's pointed it out to him. And he says, you can see the ridge, the natural ridge all along here where the fault goes. And Billy says, it's very interesting. Can I take a picture of it? And he says, surely you can. And Billy remarks, well, I always have difficulty taking pictures inside the ship. They always seem to be a little bit blurry. And he says, can I take a picture through the hatch, the bottom hatch of the ship where I'm looking at? He says, you can, but it's not going to come out very good because the ship, the propulsion system is letting off some sort of radiation or whatever below the ship, and the pictures are going to be a little bit blurry. So he suggests to Billy that he take the pictures inside the ship on one of the sight screens, which he does. And he gets a picture of the San Andreas Fault. So then he says, well, okay, on to San Francisco, and let's see that. It just takes a minute or two, and they're over in San Francisco, and they're just south of San Francisco, kind of looking northwest. And Billy remarks that he is surprised at the extent of the destruction. It's far greater than he really thought it was going to be. And actually, he's kind of taken back, and they both get a little emotional at the mass destruction that there is. Apparently, it's one of the, a very bad earthquake. Billy says, well, is there some landmark or American building, he calls it here, that I could take a picture of that everybody would recognize right away, so surely they would know that I took a picture of the future. And he comments in there as he's taking it, he says he wants to take a picture of this turn of the century earthquake. There's no exact date given, but there is the phrase that it's happening right at the turn of the century. Now, we're in 92 now. Then also it's mentioned that even though they move forward in the future from 1978, that each time they would have gone back, the time would slightly be different. So, and as I've learned from Billy since, that things are speeding up a little bit. So we don't know exactly when that earthquake may hit. It is certainly before the turn of the century, because if anything, it's faster than the time period that Billy saw. And he remarked at the time he was told it was at the turn of the century, right at the turn of the century. So possibly it's going to be a few years before that. So, heck, I don't know. Okay, we're up to the 106th contact, which is on Monday, April 10th, 1978. And Quetzal has some really very hard news for Billy, that he and the others have been monitoring the thoughts and feelings of all the members very carefully to see what they're doing, and things are really not going very well at all. As a matter of fact, he remarks in here, and he gives the names of several group members who are on their own secretly talking and discussing and are thinking very negative thoughts about the whole center idea. They're even going so far as to try to undermine Billy, and they're talking to other people, telling them, don't invest in this, don't put any money into the house, and it's getting very bad. There's even a couple of people who are developing great hate for Billy's wife. There's lots of jealousies going on. And so Quetzal says, you know, this really is not working out the way we expected, so we're going to have to kind of put the group on some sort of probation here, where we can monitor their thoughts for a while and see if this really changes. And this time Billy is pretty much in agreement. Things have not gotten better. The group steadily is getting worse, even no matter what. Things have not gotten better. The group steadily is getting worse, even no matter what he can do about it. That the teachings aren't going well. Certain members are just, violently opposed to them, and they're going to have to leave the group, which they wind up doing. So it's kind of a sad time. It's kind of the beginning of the end, when both Quetzal and Billy actually are beginning to realize that this just is not working out. That Billy's mission as a prophet may have to be served in other ways. Well, on the 107th contact, that's Saturday, May 20th, 78, we're up to 107 of them now, Billy's surprised was Semjase and Pleiadian come to see Billy. And Semjase is back, and he's, of course, very excited about this. He hasn't seen her. She's been gone for 3 months since the accident. So he's really happy to see them. And, there's the usual exchange of, how are you, great to see you, etc., etc. And one of the first things Semjase says, which is very nice, is she says, tell Jacobus that I don't hold anything against him. It's not his fault. And Billy's very happy about this, because Jacobus, there's been a lot of anger vented toward Jacobus for the accident, because they all feel like he caused the accident, and it wouldn't have happened with, if he hadn't been sneaking around and being irresponsible. And Jacobus himself, I know him, he's really kind of a sweet guy, but he's a little slow, and I don't mean that unkindly, and he has a difficult time with things. And he felt very bad. He felt very bad when this happened. So it was very nice for her to say that and kind of perk up his feelings a little bit. Billy's feeling a little better now, and he's kind of excited that Semjase's back. And he says, can we just fly over by the house? And she says, sure. And they fly over by the house, and his wife and several members of the group, he sees them down in front of the house, and he hops on the radio so they can hear him. And he's saying hello to everybody down below. And he says, Semjase, could you please just let the ship be seen from it so everybody could see you? And she says, oh no, it's not possible to do. I don't have Quetzal's permission. So unfortunately that wasn't possible at the time. Along with this contact came the news that the Befath, the last remains of them, had been rounded up and taken off of the planet. They were going to take them to another galaxy in another location where their technologies would be taken away from them, where they really couldn't cause any more trouble. It was also mentioned that they were going to fill in some of the area below the pyramids, way down below in the big halls where the Befath had been living, and they just took everything out and filled it all in down there with some sort of dematerialization, rematerialization process. So Billy said, well, did you fill in all of the walkways and caverns below the pyramid? And she said, no, most of them are still there. We just filled in the very large ones where the Befath were living. Sadly enough, though, she had to reiterate the words of Quetzal, that yes, they and the others had really noticed the degeneration of